Hi guys.
Hey girl.
How's it going? You guys all need to put your clothes back on because this is just really awkward. Okay, so I tried to, I prayed about 10 times today, and I started out like a timeline, and it was like Christy was born, and then Christy's parents divorced, and I got overwhelmed, and I just put that away. So I'm just going to hopefully share something that you guys are going to get out of this tonight, because I did not prepare for it, but my whole life has been like that, so why change it now, right? So I was born here in Salem to family. Well, obviously I have a mom and a dad. I had 3 sisters, no brothers. I was the only boy my dad pretty much got, the closest thing, poor guy. So we were pretty close. From a really early age, obviously I was kind of the black sheep out of my other sisters. I was the one that was always the loudest, the most obnoxious, the one that was always getting in trouble. And my mom, when it came to discipline, she was very hands-on. And so very quickly I had a lot of resentment and stuff towards her for that. So I've always clung to my dad and had a huge resentment towards women from as long as I can remember. And that's something to this day I still struggle with. Let's see here. I had a fairly normal upbringing besides that. I was actually homeschooled for a really long time. I didn't start going to school until 7th grade when my parents finally decided to divorce after 22 years of marriage, which is another thing. My whole upbringing, I just sat there and watched my parents fight. And I remember sitting there just in amazement at how my dad could just like stare at a point in the wall and just like zone out, and I'm just like, holy, this guy's got a lot of practice. But it's very dysfunctional in that aspect. And so marriage is something that it's never appealed to me due to that. So once my parents finally divorced, which was like a blessing to me anyways, I stayed living with my dad, obviously, and I pretty much raised myself. I met a guy when I was 15, started dating him by 16. I ended up pregnant within probably 4 or 5 months of us dating. He was like my first everything. We were in love. And I did get a very beautiful son out of it who just turned 15 and is super amazing, and I have no idea how we did it, but he's a good kid, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. A couple years down the road, and we stayed together for about 4 years, but we obviously, me being 15 years old to 4 years, we grew out of each other. He was 4 years older than me, so that's one of the reasons why I got emancipated, because I didn't want there to be any charges pressed against him from my dad, which was going to happen if I didn't. So I got emancipated at 16 while I was pregnant, and I lived on my own ever since. Let's see here. So we ended up breaking up, and Aiden was really young. He was probably only like a year old. And about 4 years later, I met somebody else, and we planned out my daughter. It took me almost a year and a half or whatever to get pregnant with her, but once we had her, I always knew I wanted 2 kids. That was something that, I just kind of knew that I wanted a boy and a girl, and I got what I wanted, and then I was good. So, but that relationship was very dysfunctional. We were total opposites, and he had a lot of resentments and things like that towards me, and ones that I didn't even know about. So there's really a huge lack of communication. To this day, we still don't talk. So, needless to say, that did not work out. She was probably not even a year old when we broke up. And so I was a single mom for a really long time, and I loved every minute of it. And I was a damn good mom. And so then I met somebody else. My daughter was probably about 4, and started doing pills. Before I never really, I mean, I could pick up something and put it back down. I tried shrooms, I tried ecstasy, but it was like a weekend type deal. I had my kids all the time, so I really didn't do a whole lot of drug activity because it wasn't just me, I had them. But I was a heavy drinker. I mean, I had 3 DUIs underneath my belt. Anytime I did anything, there was no half-assing anything. I was 1 DUI away from prison. I was 1 driving while suspended away from prison. I had dealt with an assault charge due to Cadence's dad that I had to take to trial. I'd gone through a custody battle with her dad. It cost me about $30,000. And I finally won, that sort of thing. So I'd gone through all these things, and then I met this guy, and we started doing pills. And I was so naive to it, I didn't know that you could even get dependent on pills. I didn't know that you could, if you use them long enough or enough, that you would actually withdraw from them. So I remember calling him at work one day, and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm coming down with the flu. I'm in bed. I've been in bed all day. I've got the hot and cold chills. My legs are I'm having Charlie horses, mad, and I was just I'm super fucking sick. The only thing is I haven't started throwing up yet. Oh, well, babe, you're having withdrawals, I'll be home in a little while, I'll get you well. What the fuck do you mean I'm withdrawing? You know what I mean? I was just what, you for real? And I remember laying in bed and just being fuck this, I don't ever want to feel like this again. And that's when opiates consumed my life, basically. It went downhill from there really fucking quick. A lot of people it's gradual. Not for me. Especially with opiates, it's, and when your body's physically dependent on that, it's just you have to do everything you can to stay well. Especially being a single mom. I mean, I had kids that I had to get to school, football practices, I had to stay on top of my shit. And when I was in bed for 3 days trying to get clean, and kids are coming to me and be like, Mom, come cook us dinner, or Mom, why are you still sick? Or, it's really hard to explain to your kids what's going on. And during the custody battle with my daughter, my dad, he was living in Alaska. He actually moved back in with me because things had gotten so crazy with her dad and stuff during the custody battle. So he was actually living with us during this time. And he kept asking me, what the fuck's going on, Christy? What's going on? What is it? I'm fine. I'm fine. I got this. Don't worry about it, Dad. And poor guy. I mean, and he enabled me. He really did. I mean, I lived rent-free. I was dropping jobs left and right. Mom's running the store. I'd be gone for 4 hours. You know what I mean? And so that went on for probably about a year, almost 2. And then that boyfriend ended up moving to Eugene. And because I lived in Dallas and I didn't want anybody to know about my addiction, he was the one that dealt with all the tutors and getting the pills and things like that. So then it was really hard for me to stay well once we broke up and he moved away because he had all the control. And then I was left to try to find somebody that I can, stay well and that sort of thing. So then that's when things got even worse. And so a friend of mine, somebody I grew up with, introduced me to heroin. And was it's easier to find, it's cheaper, if you can't, find pills, here's an option. So I tried that a couple of times, and just right away I'm just sitting there thinking, Christy, are you fucking for real? Do you realize what you're doing right now? And I knew that I needed to stop. I knew that it was just going to get worse. So I called up a friend that lived over in Eastern Oregon, and she said, I could go and move over there and start over and, and things, and just get away from people, places, and things. So that's what I was going to do. And I told my kids' dads that, I just need to move away. We had just had a house fire, so I was literally, dealing with that. And then we were living in a hotel, and I told them, hey, I think this is a sign, the house fire, since we're not going to be able to move back in for a couple months, this is my opportunity to move and start over, and the kids will be in a better school district and blah, 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 and you can have more weekends, whatever it's going to take. I'll meet you halfway. Well, my youngest daughter's father wasn't okay with that, and he called CSD on me, and he made a bunch of accusations, one being on drugs. And so they got involved, and so I was dealing with the house stuff and the insurance. My dad's out of state working. I'm trying to deal with him and being the middleman with everything. And then I got CSD on my ass. and they wanted a UA, obviously. And at the time, I don't think I was dirty for heroin. I'd only tried it a few times, but I did have Vicodin and stuff like that in my system. I'd smoked pot because I was still in this hotel room trying to stay well and that sort of thing. And I didn't want to give them any reason to take my kids away. So I ended up using, my daughter was like 5 at the time. I ended up using her pee and went down to the hospital and gave them that. Well, DHS came back and said it was hot for heroin. And I knew my daughter had never used heroin before. So I'm just like, what the fuck, like, that's impossible. And I demanded a second UA, which eventually they did give me 3 days later, which was only had alcohol in it, but they already had what they wanted. It didn't matter. They told me to go do a mental health evaluation, drug and alcohol evaluation, and if I completed that, then I would get my kids back. Well, on the 9th day, I went there to go meet up with her, and she basically gave me a temporary endangerment restraining order against me, and took my kids. And I think that was my biggest regret is, being in that situation, I'm just like, who the fuck's gonna believe me? You know what I mean? Like, because I am struggling, I am an opiate addict, and if I, why would I use, even if I told them that I used my daughter's pee, then, you know what I mean? Like, then they're gonna accuse me of, like, I don't know, getting my daughter high or something, you know what I mean? Like, who knows, it could just be worse. So I just felt like super hopeless because I'm like, didn't have money for a lawyer, and it was my word against theirs. And so I just pretty much was just like, I'm totally fucked, and I just lost my kids, and there's like no coming back from this, And so I'm sitting in this hotel by myself. My dad's out of state. My best friend doesn't even believe me. My ex is back in the picture, supposedly clean and working, and supporting me. And I'm in this hotel room, basically on Suboxone because I'm trying to stay abstinent from anything and get my shit back together. And I'm starting appointments with counselors and stuff like that. He comes down to visit me. And his idea of, relief or solving the problem or whatever was to go get high. And I always thought PTSD or whatever was like something that you only experienced if you were like in a traumatic event, like, being raped or something like that. Like, I didn't know that you could suffer from it, until years later when I was in treatment. And honestly, to this day, I think that's probably one of the most traumatic things that ever happened to me, because I was mom for as long as I could remember, and then just like losing my kids like that and having them stripped away and just like not having any control over it. Like, I was just in that hotel room, like, so fucking lonely. I didn't have anybody. And my daughter, I literally lost her right after Valentine's Day, and her birthday is March 5th, so she celebrated her 6th birthday without me. My birthday was 2 days later, so I was literally like in this hotel room by myself. Like, I couldn't even talk to my kids over the phone. My dad, everybody just turned their back on me, And so yeah, I got fucking high. And by the time I went to court and things like that to try to get the kids back, because I did keep going and trying to like go through the process and things like that, hoping to like grasp some sort of like custody or visitations or anything like that. By the time I got to court, 6 months, 8 months down the road, I was a heroin addict and I was homeless living in a fucking car. So of course they're going to give custody away to their dads. And that's exactly what happened. So my life just spiraled downhill from there. After I lost the kids and everything, and I was homeless living in my car, I hustled and I boosted, just for my addiction. So I trumped up a lot of charges in a very short period of time, a lot of thefts. I had secret indictments done on me, all sorts of good stuff. I never showed up once to court. Like, I think I had 7 failure to appears. What was it? November 10th. Okay, so one of the last times I got arrested, there was like 10 different charges, and I'm getting fingerprinted, and I remember looking it up, and I'm like, this isn't good, is it? I'm like, this is a lot of shit, right? And he's just like, I didn't think they were going to book and release me then, you know what I mean? I'm just like, fuck. And he was just like, well, we'll see. And he's like, have they asked you the 100 million questions yet? I'm like, no. He's like, then they might release you. I'm like, okay. And I got released, and I was just kind of like, holy shit, I don't know how they let me go, because like after that I was just like, I'm never going back, And so I had all these warrants and failure to appears, and so finally, that went on for months, and finally I don't even know why, but all of a sudden I just decided like I was going to show up to one of my court dates, and I just thought the judge was going to be so excited that I was there. I was like, hey, I'm here. I know I'm like a half hour late, but it's cool, And he was like, so can you pass the UA? I'm like, sure, And they really did UA me. Like I was trying to call his bluff. So yeah, they UA'd me. That was the first time that I went to jail. And I got put on paper. I had 28 months hanging over my head, 0 tolerance. Spent a few months in there. That was the first time that I ever experienced like a moment of clarity, where I was just like, wow, like you're living in your car. Like, your kids don't see you, is this like what you want to be? Like my dad came to see me, and he's just like, so like, is this just, the thing you're going to do now? Like, what is this? A roof over your head, a free meal, like, I was like, no. I was like, they're going to let me out. I've got a court date coming up. He's like, you've got a public safety hold on you. Like, you have no bail, Christy. Like, you're not getting out of here. Like, and I think that's when it was kind of like, oh, that's not normal? Like, okay. So, they released me after a few months. Like I said, I was put on probation for the first time. Prison sentence hanging over my head. Because of the holidays, there was like Christmas and New Year's, and so I hadn't even had a chance to meet my PO yet, and my sister thought it was a bright idea to go boost for the kids for Christmas. So we got caught. Weird. And I just remember her being like, they're going to send her to prison. Like, don't take her, take me, even though I'm the one pushing out a cart full of shit. I'm like, pretty sure they got me on camera carry. Like, it's cool. And so I really thought I was going to prison because I was on 0 tolerance. I hadn't even met my PO yet, and I already had a new charge. Like, I was just like, oh, this is good. This is really good. And so then Christmas came up, and I had no presents for the kids, and then the dads wouldn't even let me see them. So what do? I do what I know best, and I relapsed, and I used, and I ended up dead on a Carl's Jr. bathroom floor, where later I was revived. And overdosing, unfortunately for me, has been a huge part of my story. And I hadn't really mentioned that a whole lot before, but I've probably overdosed over like 10 times. I've been hospitalized 6 times. That was probably, I remember that was like overdose number 6 at the time, that one. And my sister had already found me twice. So that I know has done a lot of damage to her and stuff, and I feel bad about that. But it got to be such a regular thing that I stopped going to the hospital. I just started refusing it, you know what I mean? I was just like, oh, this is cool, this happens. Like, yeah, it happens a lot. And so I hadn't even met my PO yet, and I was already a new charge and an overdose, and they wanted to take me to jail that night for using because I had stuff on me, and I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean you're going to arrest me, with a possession charge? Like, I just died. Like, don't you guys have any sympathy, like, whatsoever, Like, don't you think I've been through enough, And later they came back and said they weren't going to go ahead and arrest me, but they gave me a ticket, and that ended up getting dropped, luckily, but because it was an overdose. But so anyways, I see my PO, and I'm dealing with this charge, and I thought I was going to go to prison right then and there, and that's not what happened. And so because I was living in clean and sober living and going to treatment and all that stuff, they kind of gave me a chance. They kind of gave me a slap on the wrist. I got quite a few slaps on the wrist, actually. I kept basically connecting, like I'd get 30 days and then I'd relapse and overdose. And then I'd get 60 days and I'd relapse and I'd overdose. And so finally they put me in jail, and basically it was like, we're not going to release you from jail until you go into inpatient. And so I went into inpatient. I completed that. That was probably one of the best experiences of my life. I really enjoyed that experience. Met a lot of awesome people and got really close to a lot of people I still talk to today. I got out of inpatient, living in New Options. I had 6 months clean, and I thought I could go back to bartending because I needed the money, because I owed child support a lot of money. So I went back to bartending at the Silver Inn of all places. Don't know what I was thinking. I think that lasted, probably about 3 or 4 weeks before I, before I was using again, let's just say. And so, let's see, obviously I got kicked out of New Options. That's a given. Let's see here. And then, I got my own place. I got my own place down by the flats, 25th and Lee. Yeah. I love that place. Yeah. I was so excited. I got my own place. I got money. Shit's good, right? So, my thing between me and this boyfriend that we were on and off this whole time is, we couldn't deal because people that deal drugs end up going to prison, right? And I didn't want to go to prison. I think I moved into that house. I was living there for about 6 months by myself. He told me that he was clean. I was trying to get clean, on and off. So I was like, okay, let's get back together. We're going to get clean. I think it was 2 weeks later we were dealing drugs out of my house. And so that's where that went. I obviously was not involved with NA, and that was a huge, before when I had the 6 months clean and everything, I was living in New Options, I was very involved with NA, and met a lot of amazing people. I was going to say, let's back this up a bit, because that's a huge part of this story. Getting into recovery, I started working steps, I had a sponsor. I was doing the damn thing, but I procrastinated a lot, and I procrastinated on my 4th step, and I put it off, and I put it off, and I had it on paper, but I didn't hit up my sponsor and get it out and go on to that 5th step. And so that was a huge, once you get involved in recovery and things like that, and you go back out, it's very hard to go back in those rooms. And it took me way longer than it should have. It's almost I think we finally added up. It was almost a year. I had fallen off. I was absconding for 7 months. I had no idea, why my PO hadn't shown up to just pick me up. I had the deadbolt locked it was a ritual. People got kicked out of my house if they didn't remember the deadbolt. They were burnt. I'm you never know, he's coming any day now. I know it. So, but anyways, so, I broke up with that boyfriend finally. And I thought, with just me, in my house, I was going to run this shit right, and it would be my way and all this stuff. And basically what happened is it just went from dealing out of it to basically my house turned into a trap house, straight up. I had people in and out of there. I was getting robbed left and right. I literally had somebody shoot me up so they could steal my truck and give me a hot shot. And I owed them my life because they revived me. They didn't leave me on my bathroom floor dead. They actually brought me back. So I should be thankful, right? These are the people that I had in my life that were friends. So, let's see here. We were at about 8 of us in my living room one morning. It was 6:30 in the morning. We're smoking down, and I hear this knock on the door. And it's one of those knocks where you're oh, fuck. Here we go. And I'm either that's my dad or that's the cops. And I was either way, we are not answering it. This is not going to be good, guys. Either way, like, fuck. And I'm like, I'm going to go to the bathroom and lock the door. You guys, see how this all turns out. So I actually went to the bedroom window to try to hop out of it, and there's a canine outside. I was like, whoo. So I was like, we're not going to go that route. And I was just, there was like a lot of cops in my house. And they were more interested in the people that were in there than the drugs. And so I was like, oh, shit. Like, who are you guys, by the way? Like, because I don't think all this is for me. So, needless to say, I guess I had a rapist in my house. I had somebody that was eluding police the day before with stolen vehicle rap. I had my collection of warrants as well in a couple different counties. But, these are people that I thought I knew. And so that's how my life was. That's the people I surround myself with towards the end. But let's see, it was 11/8 when we got raided, and my PO was finally there in the parking lot. I'm like, hey, Jeff, how's it going? And they got everybody out one by one. I think there was a total of like 8 of us or 9 of us and stuff. And needless to say, I got kicked out of my apartment. Management didn't appreciate that too much, I guess. And I went to jail for a while again. And they wanted to revoke me. And I was okay with that. And I think that's probably one of the scariest things is just kind of being like, I'll be lucky at this point if I end up in prison. You know what I mean? Like, that would probably be a blessing, not only to me, but my family, because they're going to be able to sleep at night and know where I'm at. And I remember the judge just being like, what if I let you out? Or, what's going to be different? And I told him, at this point, dude, like, this probably isn't even my rock bottom, because I'm sure I can find a new one if you let me back out. Like, we always can, right? And I knew I probably deserved to go to prison, all the shit that I'd done while I was out there. And at this point, I wasn't there for my kids at all. I even missed my own kid's birthday this last year, my son's. And I was supposed to bring the cake, and I was so high out of my mind and so hadn't slept in so long. I couldn't even realize that my phone wasn't working because I was putting in the password wrong to my Wi-Fi, so I couldn't call anybody, right, or walk to the neighbor's house that's 10 feet away to call somebody for a ride. That's how bad it got. So I remember sitting there telling the judge, I just wanted to die. I was the biggest dirtbag on the world, I felt like anyways. And I just told him I had no sincere, genuine, true friends in my life. That if he let me back out, I'd probably just continue to commit crime because that's the lifestyle that I was leading, and that's basically all I knew for the last 5 years. And that he'd probably be doing the community and me a favor. And I remember looking over at my dad thinking he's going to be crying. And I couldn't tell if he was just pissed or if he was upset, or if he was crying or whatever. Because I look over, I was just one of those faces where you're like, oh, shit. And the judge was just like, I'm going to give you another chance. And I was just like, what the fuck? What do you mean? I'm just I don't know. What's going on right now? And my dad, when I got out of jail, he was just kind of they're not doing any favors, they might as well just take you out back and shoot you in the head, because, you're just, you're fucked. Nothing's changed, and this last run, I know that it was something that I needed to experience. I'm very stubborn and hard-headed, and it takes a lot, I guess. I don't learn very quickly, obviously. And this last run, I think, really put a bad taste in my mouth. You know what I mean? It's I knew I wanted more for myself than that. I shouldn't have to fingerprint people before they come into my house. Coming back into the rooms, it was like open arms, NA is like my family. And it was like when I lost them, that was a huge part of me. And of course, I'm still dealing with a lot of guilt and shame and things like that for things I've done. I know that in time that'll dissipate. But really working a program is where the healing is for me. Getting a sponsor, working steps, the meetings, they help. My amends, to my kids and stuff like that, because I can never turn back time, is being who I want to be, who I want them to grow into. I do little things like I show up on time to pick them up. When I say I'm going to be there, I'm there. I try to go out of my way and show, how thankful I am to the people that help me out. And I try to do service work, even when it's sometimes things I don't want to do, like a speaker meeting. But recovery definitely is a blessing. I wouldn't ever go back and do anything differently just because I know that God has a plan for me. I don't think that He'd allow me to live through 10 overdoses if there wasn't a reason. I know that there's something for me, out there that I'm supposed to be doing. And even if it's going to a meeting or reaching out to a newcomer or being there for somebody that's struggling, that's what I'm going to do. So, yeah. I think that's it.